closer. I think I've seen your heart before, and I know that you know. I can tell. He says, girl, don't let your mind work overtime. No need to reason with love. No matter anyway, we have arrived, and there's an undeniable sign. This is an undeniable time to live. You're unforgettable, credible. It's just inevitable.
Well, for people who have never heard of Koyopa, how would you explain it?
It's a new word to me in that I discovered it, through my partner, Eduardo Griego, the Mayan priest, when he showed me his papers that he brought back from Guatemala that were, all of the things his teachers gave him. And there was a glossary there of Mayan terms from the Quiche Mayan language. When I was working on the book, I was about 3/4 of the way done, and I still had no title for the book. He read me the definition of it, which is lightning in the blood and inner soul, and receive supernatural messages. Now, I had been calling this event that I had, this bioenergetic event, in 1998, I'd been calling it Kundalini. Because what we do is we go to the internet or we go to books when we have an experience of something. We're looking for a definition from the world. We don't really need that definition for ourselves. We know what happened. We know what it connected us to. But in order to communicate with other people, we need those words. So I started using Kundalini because it was the closest word to describe this bioenergetic happening that changed me, changed my consciousness, radically changed my consciousness, and opened me up in a variety of ways. And then when I read Koyopa in 2015, when that name came to me, I was like, that's it more than Kundalini. So I'm going to go with that word because I had been to Guatemala. I had walked the sacred Mayan fire path. I did learn of these things. This word just came later, and so I'm using that word now because I'm more closely connected to the Mayan wisdom than I am the Sanskrit at this point in my life. Yeah.
And yet there are parallels.
Yes, absolutely.
And the lightning in the blood seems to me to be parallel to chi.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. The Kundalini explanations that I came across, when you're looking, I can't say I had Google at the time. Yeah. It was mostly books, finding what did other people say when they had a Kundalini experience. There were no exact matches that I found in other people's experiences. Probably the greatest match I had was reading about Saint Teresa of Avila and her experiences with the presence or the angel that visited her and had a spear and just pierced her. Those kinds of descriptions were more meaningful to me than some of the Eastern Indian, the Hindu Sanskrit meanings, because it was very intellectual, a lot of what I was reading of, and then this part rises and then that part rises and then it meets and then boom. It didn't happen that way at all. there was enormous energy that was released from the base of my spine. I can identify with that. But it was just a rush of powerful light and sound and energy, and it wanted to move up through me. I wasn't aware of sides and labels and names and definitions. I was in it. It was real time. Just trying to be with that level of vibration coursing through your body, coursing through your blood. And so then at a certain point, you don't think at all. There's no thought whatsoever, because you explode into just pure oneness, and you are that. You are the universe. And you do feel at home with that. It's not a scary experience. There are no descriptors for it. And even after you return from it, and you adapt and integrate over years. It takes years to integrate an event this large. We can have little stirrings of these kinds of bioenergetic frequencies, and it can feel interesting, and we can have these epiphanies maybe, but the full Kundalini or Koyopa awakening is something that is a radical shift in consciousness and worldview, completely shifts you from whatever you thought was real and whatever you thought was true. You now are redefining yourself on a cosmic or universal level, even though you're still in form and you're still a human. It's like, oh, well, how do I do this now? But I have to say, this was the same experience as my contact with non-human intelligence. Each time one of those events happened, it radically changed my worldview. So these are deaths and rebirths, one after the other. And it helps you to release just those activities alone. You're releasing fear, you're releasing trauma, you're releasing everything from the past that doesn't fit into what you're evolving into. There are people having these experiences in the West that are having them, but they have no place to put them. They're not, it's not even welcome. So many times I would want to tell people about this love that filled me, and it changed me, and it's light, and it's God. I know what God is now. I'm connected to it, and people just want to back up from you and go, well, how does it fit into the Bible verses? How does it fit into philosophy? How does it fit into everything that we've learned in the outer world? And it's not about that. It's about waking up to it within our own consciousness and not looking to the outer world for acceptance or validation from the past, all that we've known, but waking up in this now moment and moving forward in this consciousness. And this is possible for anyone, because we all have that divine spark within us.
You're triggering so many different questions for me.
Good.
As far as the experiencer, I would love to hear more about that.
Okay.
The experiencer, the awareness of being an experiencer, and it's a word that could maybe help people identify with an experience that they've had. But when did you first start identifying that way and feeling that?
Well, experiencer is a new word. It's a new term. Before, what I was called was an abductee. I was, what else did they call us? It was just a very big muddled pool of inconsistencies and misunderstandings, and none of it worked for me. But how it started was being a child and having these tall gold white and bluish white beings visit me. And it wasn't unusual. In fact, it was wonderful. It was these beings that I loved, and they loved me, and there wasn't any kind of comparison. to anything else yet because I was just a young child. And so I have that as my marker for what's natural. And then as I moved throughout my life, less experiences would happen, so I would become conditioned in the world just like everybody else. Then when these beings, light beings, sometimes just an experience of the third eye, of seeing them and feeling them. I've never been one to say that I've seen spaceships. I've never been really interested in ufology, UFOs and spaceships, because when I was in my early 20s, this finally was just kind of drummed into me because I was always looking to the skies, to the stars. It's like, I want to see a UFO, you know, I've had these experiences, and are they, so when the outer world talks about UFOs, is that the same, is that a match for my experiences? Because I didn't see spaceships. So there was always that kind of exploration, constant exploration within my own consciousness. Anyway, I was looking out, I was out in the desert in Southern California looking up at the stars, and I was like, why can't I see one? I want to see you, please show me. And then I heard boom, like reverberating within me, on the inside, not the outside. We fly direct to your heart and mind. And that ended up being a lyric in one of my songs later. But after that point, I never searched the skies anymore, because I was told through that frequency, it wasn't just the words I heard, I was told through the frequency that it's not about spaceships, it's about frequency, it's about energy. And this is where the conversation happens, in our hearts. Mm-hmm. Not that, I'm not saying other people who have other kinds of experiences, I'm not saying that's wrong, that's just hasn't been the way that I've accessed. I was told very clearly, this is how I access. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So these experiences happened many, many, many times. Dozens and dozens of times over my life in a variety of forms. Some were more frightening than others. And it was simply what I attribute to the gap that starts to grow between your persona, that you start to believe this is who you are in the outer world, versus who you know you are, but you can't speak about it in the outer world. So that gap grows, and that's where fear and everything that you don't understand about, or trauma, any kind of trauma, goes in that chasm. And then when these high vibrational beings come to interact, the fear just rises to the surface. And then maybe in some of these experiences that people have where they're terrified, maybe, I can't speak for other people, only myself, perhaps there is a bit of our own fear coming up and we don't know what to do with it, so we project. And this is what we do in our everyday lives too. If we can't own our own, emotional, unconscious emotional debris, if we can't own that and heal that ourselves, then that gets flung out at other people, projected onto them. So it's the same thing with these high vibrational beings. And that's why they can't come near us in a physical way, in a more physical way, many cases, because, and it's why we have to be frozen in place sometimes when we have the interactions, because otherwise we'll just flail around and go into incredible fight or flight kind of actions, because it's our own fear, has nothing really to do with the beings that are coming to interact with us in a lot of cases. There might be negative beings, I'm not saying they don't exist, but again, I'm only speaking from my own experience.
Well, and it's interesting how the media puts out so much, and with YouTube and different, networks of different ways of getting information, we can hear about so many different types of experiences. And
Yeah.
I always feel like Hollywood movies really portray experiences in a terrifying way, as if there's something very sensational about scaring people.
Well, it sells.
And, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're getting addicted to this, we're paying to get that thrill. And
Yeah.
but when we're having an actual experience, because I think anyone could, so much of that is part of it at that time. When we start to
Influences us. Yeah.
and how
it
we're
can
going
have-
to process it. Well,
Right.
This is where they're going to hurt me, or this is where something bad is going to happen. Or
Right. That's a very good point, because we have a tendency to take what we've learned and try and mesh those two things together. And in a lot of cases, it has nothing to do with that at all. And if we could just be with the experience rather than being influenced by what the world told us, again, then so much more can come from understanding than if we don't allow the world to influence us in this way. But before I forget, I wanted to say too that there are lots of modalities of experiencers. There's the near-death experience, then what I just spoke of, contact with non-human intelligence. There are the bioenergetic events that we spoke of, the psychoactive plant medicines, sometimes just spontaneous meditation experiences. Lucid dreams, out-of-body experiences, and more. Those are the ones that I can think of right now. So an experiencer, really, for me, the definition of an experiencer is one who has been taken beyond all that we know and all that we've been told. And we have a direct experience of something that has not been explained properly in our everyday world. Religion is used to explain things. Science is used to explain things. Just education in general. All of our institutions, in some way, are there to help explain these things, but they don't. They can't, because it's a one-on-one experience with the cosmos. So, and you can find people who have had like experiences, and you can find resonance with those people. Like, I had this experience, you had that, but the common denominator in all of these experiences is that we felt and experienced something more than what we realized or what we were told we were. And then when we return, a lot of times our culture and other conditioned people around us will say, oh, well, that's just da-da-da, whatever they learned, or that's a demon, if they're religiously oriented, and this has been conditioned into them to believe that anything outside of what's here in the Bible or other sources, that it's of the devil. And that's not really fair, because what's happening, I feel, through these experiences is it's not about ETs. It's not about the angels that we meet on the other side when we die and come back. It's not, that's all just the characters in this story that leads us back to our Creator and having that direct contact and connection with our Creator again, that divine source. And I believe that people who have these extraterrestrial experiences, or not even extraterrestrial, I mean, it's non-human intelligence, it's angels, it's fairies, it's all of the beings that live in the dimensions that we can't see or hear anymore because of our conditioning. But it's really just them kind of nudging us and saying, you're more than this, and let me show you. Let me show you who you are, so that you can perhaps go tell other people, in your family, in your communities, that you had this experience and you felt God or you felt love, or, just to begin the conversation, that there's more. And to not shut it down, but to be welcoming of these, the voices of these experiencers, because they have a lot to share.
No matter anyway, we have arrived, and there's an undeniable sign. This is an undeniable time to live. You're unforgettable, credible. It's just inevitable.